In Indonesia, I sixfolded the trade numbers between Indonesia and Hungary. I'm Judit Pach. I'm living in Singapore for already over 4 years now. I moved here as Ambassador of Hungary to Singapore. I achieved one of the biggest technology exports of Hungary.
Wow.
Was an electronic tolling system. It was a $300 million kind of concession agreement. So just announced a month ago, which is a 700 million euro investment in R&D manufacturing facility of a company.
Amazing.
I actually never wanted to become a diplomat. I saw how the embassies operate, and already at a very, very small age, I figured that diplomat is actually not such a nice job, because my office back then was next to the office of our current foreign minister, and he was putting together the list of ambassadors. And he told me that, he's looking for an ambassador, and I thought he's joking.
How old were you at the time? Don't mind me
30.
asking. Okay, very young.
Extremely young. I think diplomats and especially ambassadors are the epitome of generalists. Start the day off at the Semicon conference, then I would have lunch with a potential investor, then I might go to a cultural program in the evening or the next day I would be doing a food promotion event. The first couple of months were really tough, and I remember I had this one day when I was literally sitting on the floor of my office crying my head out because I was I will never be able to do this. Right now, looking back, I think they were right. I needed to learn a lot.
Yeah.
Ambassador is the top of the diplomatic career.
Yeah.
There is no higher role. I basically reached the top. I have over 25 years until I retire. And I was I cannot do this on and on, again and again, and no new challenge. I either do the change right now, or later it will be even harder. I chose to transition to the private sector, and now since 2 months, I'm advisor to an integrated European energy company called MET Group. So I think for me, energy was this very, very impactful sector. Digitalization, AI, and data center, especially right now in Asia, it's insane. And with
Judit, welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm really good. Thank you.
I'm so pleased that you're here. You are the first, now you're an ex-ambassador, but that we've had on the show, so I'm very honored. Can you kindly give a quick introduction for those that may not know you before we turn back the pages of time about your career journey so far, please?
So I'm Judit Pach. I'm living in Singapore for already over 4 years now. I moved here as Ambassador of Hungary to Singapore. Previously, I have been Hungary's ambassador to Indonesia. And before that, I have been constantly in the government sphere. So I have worked with our Ministry of National Development, with our Prime Minister's office, and also with our president. And right now, after 20 years of my career in public sector, I chose to transition to the private sector. And now since 2 months, I'm advisor to an integrated European energy company called MET Group.
Wow, congratulations. Well, so many accomplishments, but switching, and we'll go back to that in a minute, but switching careers to the private sector, I'm sure there was a lot of consideration. Now, what I want to do is, I'm just curious, because I told you when we first met that my wife had always thought about becoming an ambassador or a diplomat, and this was a goal of hers. When did you realize that was your calling early on?
Actually, it's very funny because I never, ever thought of it as a calling. And if you would have asked me at any given stage of my time and asked me what I want to be, I would have never told you that I want to be a diplomat.
Really?
I actually never wanted to become a diplomat because as a kid, my father was a correspondent and we lived in Germany. And we were definitely in contact a lot with the local embassy there. And I saw how the embassies operate. And already at a very, very small age, I figured that diplomat is actually not such a nice job. And I don't really want to do that. Then while I was studying, and I studied international relations, I did an internship at the foreign ministry where I again realized that that's definitely not something what I want to do, especially because of the strict hierarchy which was there. So my experience when I was as an intern and I was at the German department, because I spoke German, I grew up half of my life in Germany. So my task was that I think one of the ministers or someone went to Germany, and my task was to give them a background on domestic political happenings in Germany. I thought I wrote a quite good resume of it, 1.5 pages. I wrote it. gave it to my like, I don't know, instructor or like lead person who was responsible for me. He read it through. He put his name on it. He sent it over to the head of department. Head of department read it through, and no changes, nothing.
Wow.
He put his name on it. He sent it to the deputy state secretary. He put his name on it. Who sent it to the state secretary? Who put his name on it? And at the end, we got back like what would be the final dossier of the minister who was traveling. And of course, my name was nowhere there, but the actual output was word by word mine. And I was like, that's like not what I want to do. It's like
crazy.
I especially at a super young age, I felt this so unfair that like this is my product, my output, and my name is nowhere ever there. And just this whole hierarchy of it, this felt for me like, and I was like, no, I never want to be that. And then actually I was asked to become ambassador because at one point of my career, I thought that I would like to really go to the international sphere in a sense that I want to step back a bit from like big politics, because I was like very strongly involved in a lot of things at the Prime Minister's office, and I thought I need a bit of a break. And I actually wanted to go as a consul and press attaché to Indonesia. So I picked a country.
Why Indonesia?
Because back then I was working a lot in Europe, and I saw a lot of political communications. I think for me it was that at a very young age I saw a lot into the workings of politics, and I'm not sure I was really prepared for it. And I wouldn't say it was a kind of burnout, but I definitely felt that I need a bit of a distance. And I figured that I needed a distance. And for me, like Southeast Asia was always a place which was very much calling to me, because it was this melting pot of different religions, different nations. Love the weather, love the jungle, I love nature.
Yeah.
So I was like, Indonesia is just the perfect place to be, wonderful, amazing. And I thought like, okay, I can just be a consul, so just like stamping visas and like doing, and the ambassador decides everything, and I will be just good. I lay back, I explore the beaches, I go wandering in the rainforest, and I'm stamping visas, and it's good.
And what happened?
Actually, because my office back then was next to the office of our current foreign minister, and back then we knew that he will become the foreign minister, and he was putting together the list of ambassadors. And he had this idea in mind that he wants to create this new creed of ambassadors and new creed of foreign policy, where he wants to focus on trade diplomacy. And he wanted to select people according to that. And then when he learned that I actually want to withdraw and go to Indonesia, he told me that, he's looking for an ambassador. And I thought he's joking.
Really?
Because at that time, I was very, very young. I definitely...
How old were you at the time, if you don't mind me asking?
30.
Okay.
Which is, for an ambassador, this is like
very young.
Extremely young.
Do you think it's because you were almost reluctant, because you didn't covet it, that maybe because you were so humble and you were not chasing it? Do you think that's one of the reasons why they asked you?
I don't think so. I think opportunities arise in your life, and it's your choice if you live with it or not.
I love that.
This was an opportunity. It was not because I was humble. I was not humble. I was always open to like whatever opportunity arises. I'm open to the opportunity.
So take me back. So they said, listen, this is what we want you to do. What was your immediate reaction? You thought, this is not real, or?
Because we were friends, I was telling him like, if the big boss, who's the prime minister, if he says yes, then yeah, sure, of course. But I didn't make it a thought. I thought he's like kind of, and it was, I think, also from his part, it was like, oh, I'm looking for someone for Indonesia. So it was both. It was kind of like chance, opportunity. It was a mixture of that, like just in a moment. Most probably while he was sitting there thinking of candidates, I wouldn't have come into his mind. And for me, I've never thought of it. I would never have really entertained the thought that I want to be an ambassador. I never had this in mind.
Wow.
But just that we met there in this moment, in that corridor, and somehow he was in that space. I was telling him that I want to move there, and it's just like, when you have these moments in your life.
Yeah, the sliding door moments.
And back then I didn't thought about it. And I think even he didn't. Then he went back and he was like, actually, this might not be a bad thought. He suggested it. It was accepted. And
he had vision. It takes a lot of courage as a leader to empower someone who's young and perhaps, in theory, not maybe ready. So credit to him.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Sure. One of the things that we said when we had a first chat about, when I invited you to come onto the show, and I've had the privilege of meeting a few diplomats, and the one thing that you shared with me, which is so spot on based on my observations, is diplomats, ambassadors, general broad depth of knowledge is on another level, because you have to cover so many. Just share with the audience like how diverse your topics throughout the course of a day, let alone over the course of the year, can be.
It's incredible. And right now, especially that I moved to a very specific sector and to a very specific role, I realize like how when you want to describe a generalist, I think like diplomats and especially ambassadors are the epitome of generalists, because like in a day, like let me give you like one day of mine was like start the day off at the Semicon conference, giving a 20-minute speech about like Hungary's potential in the semiconductor industry. Then I would have lunch with a potential investor who is interested in what kind of incentives and how the Hungarian government is supporting investors, how the investment landscape in Europe is. Then I might meet with like companies who are like Hungarian companies wanting to enter Singapore. Then I might go to a cultural program where we would be looking like a Hungarian dance group, how to cooperate with like the Esplanade Theatre. And then might be also in the evening I would be, or like the next day I would be doing a food promotion event where I would be talking about Hungarian wines and how Tokaj Asszú is produced, and about how marbled and how special the Hungarian Mangalica pork is, and if you feel the juiciness and so on. So it's like literally going from like semi-cons to like food products and food safety, and then going back to Hungarian cultural values and like going to schools, especially like preschools. I did, that was one of my hardest presentation, to do a presentation of Hungary to like 4 or 5 years old.
I can't imagine. That's like, it would almost have been comical, right? Surely.
I mean, it was lovely. My staff was super nice. They prepared for me the presentation, like, and we did this amazing thing, like, what does the dog say in Singapore and what does the dog say in Hungary? Because in Singapore it's like woof woof, in Hungary it's like wow wow. And of course, like this was in like to sing with them.
Yeah.
And then the next moment I'm going to a trade related event and I need to be again serious. So,
amazing.
yeah.
Well, you know, like just the sideways, but Arnold Schwarzenegger's biggest movie was arguably Kindergarten Cop. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
I love it. And I mean, because he and Danny DeVito made a lot of money, and the director, because they took back-end money. But the reason why that's brilliant, because I watched it as a kid, and then I watched it with all of my kids, and there's so much you can take, and because there's no filter on children. You know, they say it stone cold, right? Yeah. Which is great. Now, what I want to do, I want to go back. So you were at uni, you were at Strasbourg.
Yeah.
And then you went on to business school.
I did the two. For me, everything came very quickly in my life. I did my 2 degrees basically parallel.
Okay. Wow.
So I studied economics and international relations, and like.
See, that was already training, because you're already doing 2 different things simultaneously.
And at the same time, I was also working at my first job at a German company.
Wow.
So
how did you balance all of that?
I don't know. Somehow I'm just a person. I always love when things are very
hectic, chaos.
No, not the chaos, but when I don't have free time. I don't really need free time. I'm like, if everything is well structured and everything is put together, I love to use my time and I love challenges. I love to be constantly active. I'm not a person who would like, from time to time, yes, I need that. But even in my young age, I was like, even as a small kid, I was like taking ballet classes. I was learning the violin. I was studying music. At the same time, I was studying like hell in school. And at the same time, I took part in history competitions. Yeah. And I love to be on stage.
Love it.
So it's like, and it was like every day I had something. If it was like not ballet class, then it was violin class, then it was participating for a competition.
But I think, so I'm convinced, because I did a lot similarly. And so, for example, a lot of people, when they read books, I tell people I tend to read 3 books at the same time, not literally, but like I'll read a few chapters of one, and they tend to be on different subjects. And people think that's weird, but I thought, think about it. If you read the newspaper, you go from the business section to the life, what's the difference? And actually, I find that I am able to retain information. And then the thing as an ambassador, as a business person, you're having to connect the dots all the time. Because you can be talking about geopolitics, you can be talking about Indonesia, and you can dovetail that into the semicon business, into, you know, retail, because the reality is we're all living on the same planet.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when did you realize, so you finished uni, then what happened? What was the first thing that you did?
Actually, it's like And again, that's why opportunities are so important to me, because I was starting to look for a job. So during uni, I worked at a German investment company, and I thought like, yeah, that would be kind of the way where I wanted to go. And I just started to look at job ads and sending out my CV when I actually got approached by this opportunity that the new president of Hungary, who was recently elected, he is looking for, or not he, but his team in press. His chief of press is looking for someone who speaks languages and who can help them with the international communication.
Can you explain to the audience the difference between president and prime minister in Hungary?
Hungary, the situation is very similar to Indonesia. So prime minister is head of government and he is the executive power, whereas president is more of a figurehead role of like comprising the whole nation, representing the nation.
So like Singapore as well.
Exactly.
Because a lot of countries don't have this.
Yeah.
So just to explain to the audience who may not know.
Yeah. For us, it's the same system like in
So
Singapore.
So you were head of press.
I was not head of press. First, I was hired just as a press person to deal with international media at the beginning.
Okay.
And back then, again, I was like 23.
Okay.
In 2 years' time, because back then the chief of press was, he was a journalist and he was amazing, but he really didn't enjoy protocol. So for him to travel with the president, dress up in a suit and tie and lead press conferences, he was like, he does not like that. And once or twice he gave the task to me, and then he was like, Judith, you're doing this so right. Like, wouldn't you want to do this all the time? I was like, yeah, but I'm not chief of press. And he was like, that's okay, but you're much better. Lead all the press conferences.
Wow.
So I ended up leading all the press conferences, and I ended up always traveling with the president to everywhere where he went. So by the age of 25, I became his head of international press relations.
Amazing. Was that must have been a bit surreal, when, especially at the very beginning of that appointment? You must be thinking, how in the hell did I end up in this role at such a young age?
Oh yeah, and I learned a lot. I had this wonderful story, like, which is like very, but like, you know, how do you dress up? And come on, you come out of uni, and I think we all can relate. Like in your 20s, you definitely not dress always very properly.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is the presidential office, so like really.
Had you already gone shopping, or did they say you need to get a few suits in?
I got some suits, but of course it was like, you know, in my head back then, when my mom was like picking, and I picked those like more tight, shorter skirts, like, you know, what you imagine in your 20s.
Of course.
And I went with my mom, and I remember we went to Marks and Spencer, and she pointed out to me like a dark, like navy blue suit, which had like trousers, and it also had a skirt, which was like exactly like kind of knee height.
The hem was right there.
Knee height. And I was like, oh, that's so boring, but like, okay. And then I think it was like one visit, I was like, okay, I put this on. And then the chief of protocol, he was like, really, this is like where I started to learn and appreciate diplomacy. He was like, Judith, this is a really nice suit. and then I realized that actually everything which I had before was like not appropriate.
That is hilarious.
And I was like, thanks. And then I realized, like, okay, I need to rethink my wardrobe.
But so it's interesting. I thought they might have like an informal etiquette school, or they sit down and teach you. You just learn on the job.
Everyone think that that's the case, but no, it's not. I mean,
that should be a new business, Judah. We can set this up, right?
This is only for like high level people who are really up there. So this is like, yes, prime ministers, yes, presidents.
But my point, at that point, it's too late. I think you need to learn this at inception. You know, like I learned this stuff because I became a qualified wine waiter, sommelier, silver service waiter, and because a lot of people don't know, right? They don't know the difference between port and Madeira, and you know, so you're learning rapid fire on the job.
Yeah, but I think this is also what you need to learn in each and every job. You need to be adaptable, and you need to have this feeling that you sense that like what you're doing is good or not.
So did you go back and tell Mum about
of course, yeah.
What did she say? She smiled.
She was like, and she smiled, and she said like, okay, we can go and shop some more.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
But it's so funny because when we start out, it's funny because Marks and Spencer's for me was like, oh, that's an old person's shop,
yeah, for me too.
Growing up. But the British, supermodel David Gandy, he now is involved in a lot of their stuff, or recently, and he kind of changed the look and feel. But like I thought, I'm going to Marks and Spencer's to buy some clothes. Like, please, it's a game changer. All right, so then let's talk about that head of press. Was it head of press, chief of press? Both.
Depending on how you call it, and actually on my actual business card, it was like advisor to the president for international press relations, because I was so young at that time that I didn't get the official kind of job title.
Did you struggle with ageism?
Oh,
at
yes,
first?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How did you tackle it?
I actually, right now, looking back, I think they were right. I was very, very junior.
Yeah.
And of course, like, yeah, but it's like I needed to learn a lot.
Yeah.
And looking back now, I think it was good. And I remember I had this one conversation with my dad when I was like so frustrated, like I'm doing the job and they literally told me to the face that I'm not getting the job title with the salary because I'm too young. And that was the case. Right now, looking back, I kind of understand it, but it was tough, yeah, from time to time.
It must have been. And then how did you learn, like in terms of, because what you're dealing with, there's no place for you to hide. You are in the highest office, you are front and center, you know, like were people advising you on what to read and look into? Like what was your tutelage?
I mean, I picked it up as I go.
Yeah, which is quite, that's the thing people don't realize, right? They don't realize. Now, were you enjoying this part of your journey?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. How could you not?
I mean, we were traveling a lot. I saw a lot of things and I was very eager to learn and experience. And I'm a person, I'm learning a lot by experience. So just, and I was lucky enough that I sit in most of these like super high level plenary sessions. I got to see how the decisions are made. I saw how much this mattered, and it kind of like was also very insightful, yes, but also a bit like when you realize that like how high level politicians are sometimes just that the decision is not made on actual factual basis, but just on the fact that your person is right now this day, he's just had less sleep, he's not so concentrated, and he's not reading all the points which are on his paper, and that's why we are missing some crucial things. Or like how personal connections, how little things which you would think from as a normal person that these should not influence big international decisions.
Yeah.
But how you realize how much this influences them actually. And how these little things of how well prepared a politician is, how comfortable was his sleep, how well he is fed, and how well he's rested, how that influences how he's actually doing or she's actually doing negotiations.
I'm so glad we'll come back to your fitness routine, which I'm intrigued by, but these are the things that people aren't aware of, because I always say to, you know, my career coaching clients, especially as they get older, as we get older, we have less energy, but, you know, sometimes it's important to check in. Like I had a conference in Miami. I got there 2 days early because it was a very important conference. I wanted to go there and learn. And it takes a little bit of time for you to adjust. But you know, if you've got a unit and a team around you, so you're supporting the president, you want to make sure that the food's on, it's okay, you know, you're arriving at a reasonable hour, so on and so forth. This is often overlooked, right?
Yeah, and this is often what I think, like also public figures are often very much criticized about. But if you think of it, and I mean, we were talking about how an ambassador is a generalist. Think of it like the higher you go in a political ranking, the more topics they need to be aware about and the more prepared they need to be, because they are actually in the decision-making chair.
Yeah.
And I mean, just imagine how your day feels like when you didn't have enough sleep, or when the day before you had a fight with your wife, or like whatever, you are like unrested or you just feel off. How well focused you are on the job. And there is a lot of critique on like who is doing what, how they dress, how much money they spend, and so on. But at the same time, when you look at such a schedule, what they accomplish, it's like really, it's very much in the behind the scenes. And for me, at the beginning of my career, this was something which I realized like, oh, okay, so this all influences a decision, and that these are also just people like you and me.
Of course.
And they also have feelings. They also have a bad day. It's like, and sometimes the outcome depends on their personal choices.
Yeah.
Not on actually like what is super important. And you cannot expect a human being to constantly be 100% or 150%.
You know, if you reverse engineer that, it's so interesting you say that, because a lot of people say to me, how do you deal with very, very senior people? And I've been fortunate. I've been working with C-suite from the age of 27. And what I realized very early on is we're all human beings. And I remember when I met my wife's dad for the first time. He was a very senior business guy. And I think everyone was a little bit afraid of him, even though he was very jovial. And I just spoke to him as one man to another man, because the reality, he was my age at one point. And it's just how engaging you are. And when you see that person, it's like most children, they don't see their parents as human beings, maybe until after they passed away or much later on. But when you recognize that and you see, so I always say one fisherman sees another fisherman. You can see something, and if they see it looking back at you, even though you're younger, there's a human connection. One of the things I was very curious to ask you about was memory. How do you go about memorizing things when you have so many broad topics? Is it something that you learn, to fine tune? Did you practice it?
I don't. I'm very bad with numbers.
Really? But no, take away numbers, because numbers are a weird and arbitrary thing. But in terms of just, because you're remembering so many different things, how do you stay on top of that?
But I mean, I don't. It's like you don't remember. I would not be able to tell you any of the specific topics.
Okay.
It's like, for me personally, I have a very short-term memory, and I studied business and international relations because I was sure that like law was like out of the
Forget
question.
about it.
It's like, no way I can memorize. I was never good in memorizing.
Okay.
I was very happy to participate in competition of like poem recitals and so on.
Yeah.
But there I could like kind of live through it. I need to like contextualize it, like really bring it in. And that's when I can make a personal connections. Most of my insights and things which I really keep to myself is from conversation and from human interaction, because then I remember the setting that I met with Paul. We had this amazing, lovely colored table next to us, and we had the lights and so on. Yeah. And this whole setup burns into my mind together with what we've talked about. But if you just give me a paper,
it's not going to resonate.
For me, that's not how my brain functions.
That's so powerful, because I think a lot of people don't understand that, right? And I often explain to people, because the thing is, we all remember, like, how do we remember a telephone number or a door street number? Well, you put, 44 with the brown door. Well, the prettiest girl in school lives behind that door. Okay, you're going to remember the door, right? And you visualize it. Talk a little bit about optics, because in your job, in the world of government and politics, optics is everything, right? How are things perceived may be very different from what's happening in real terms. But I'm just curious, what's your take on optics and how to assess it and manage it?
I think optics is something for me every time and I do a lot of mentoring, coaching, and also when I'm thinking about myself, I think for me, one of the biggest words is authenticity. So I think it's always in everything, what you wear, how you look, how you behave. Authenticity is number one. Because it's just, no matter what you are putting on, how you look, but if this is your authentic self and if you feel confident in it, then it will come through. Yeah. And it's like, there is no one-on-one rule that like, all the women should wear like, I don't know what, or like red is a power color or whatever. Yeah. Maybe you might be good in it and you might embrace it, but maybe it's just completely not for you. Yeah. And then it just doesn't work. So I think like, first of all, like figure out like who you are. And then I think what for me is a very powerful exercise, like see yourself from the outside and see like, if you would be a person, how do you want to perceive a young, blonde, this year kind of at that age an ambassador? Yeah. What would be what you would be looking for, and like what would resonate from you if you look at yourself from the outside? Yes. And then just go from there.
But that's very powerful, because people, I think we all struggle at times to be objective, and I always say take a backward step, look at what's in front of you, take a breather, because that's important to gain that perspective, right?
And you cannot please everyone. You need to be clear on that you cannot please everyone. I mean, some people will like that I'm wearing bold colors and that I'm like kind of underlining that I'm young, because for me that was one of my strategics back then. Yeah. Because once I realized I started in Indonesia as ambassador and I realized I would never fit in, no matter how hard I try. Exactly. No matter how dark a trouser navy suit I'm putting on.
Gotta be you.
It's still, I mean, people would still recognize, because I'm not a 60 plus male.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I don't have the qualities. I'm not having the personality. So then I like kind of reversed it and I said like, okay, then underline what I'm different in. And then I started to like literally wearing like very bold colors, yellow high heels, red jacket, purple trousers, and so on. And then I could make sure that in the room, like especially in Indonesia, for them to distinguish from each other, European ambassadors was like quite hard. They were not sure if you're the Czech or German ambassador, but she's definitely the Hungarian.
I love it. And you owned it. You owned it.
Yeah. And that was for me like that was a game changer. And once I realized that this is like super powerful.
Yeah.
And I really started using it. That was a game changer.
It's funny because I always think a lot of people will say, like some of my staff that are a little bit younger, they'll say, oh, I'm younger. And I said, let's reframe it, because when I went into business, I was 27, 28, and there were two main guys that specialized in what I did. And I was thinking, for 2 weeks, I was thinking, how can I compete with these guys? They've done this for a lot longer than me. And I thought, you know what, it is ridiculous. You're not going to get 20 years experience. You're better looking, you're sexier, you're more dynamic, you're more fun, you're relaxed. So then I started there and I thought, you know what, that should be it, right? And you've got to go with yourself. And then I lost my hair. Started losing my hair when I just got married. Not because I got married, I promise. No, what happened was when my son was first born, he wasn't well. So he was in hospital for the first 3 months of his life, and it was very scary. And I started to lose my hair, and very quickly. And I thought, I never looked that good with hair. I'll just lean into it. And of course, I get a few comments here or there, but now it's part of my identity. So what in theory was a weakness or something that was negative, I just owned it. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah.
So then you became chief of staff. Now, because I feel chief of staff means different things in the context of who you're chief of staff for, what type of organization, but what did it mean for you?
So basically, after I finished, I was working with one president. When his term finished, I stayed on. I was asked to stay on with the next president, but it was a very different leadership style. And I thought like, okay, this was it, public sector. Now I'm going back to the private. Actually, that was my intention. Again, I applied to several jobs in the private sector. There was one which came through, which I really wanted to take, but there it was like, still I need to wait like a couple of months. I'm not a person who is very patient, or I was definitely much more patient now. Back then I was like, I cannot wait a couple of months. I really want to change now.
Yeah. By the way, your energy resonates that. What's next?
And then actually the Ministry of National Development approached me that they need someone to help them with communicating the new EU development plan towards Hungary and how to package that. And they were ready to take me on immediately with the right salary and the right position. I was like, okay, yeah, I wanted to go back to private, but this is it. That's the opportunity. So I'm sticking with government, and I'm actually entering the government, which is a political position. So I go to the Ministry of National Development. I started to work first on communication. Then I became deputy chief of staff, and then I became chief of cabinet or head of secretariat. It's the person who is below the Minister of State. I was the one who was handling 3 deputy secretaries and their whole staff below us handling. It was a woman. She was really good for me to have women and to see her in a leadership position.
Wonderful. You must have learned so much.
Yeah. But it was also very hectic because I was dependent on her schedule. I was preparing for her basically everything. And she was a hard worker. So for her, the day was from 9 to 10 p.m. This meant that for me, my day was from 7 to 11:30.
Yeah, I bet. Look, the reality is most women in business have to work harder and longer to be more successful, right? You have to be better than better, to best of the best. When you were in that role, did you view yourself almost like at some point as a consigliere?
Kind of, yeah, absolutely. I knew everything. I was basically her right hand.
Yeah.
And this is not a job which I think anyone can do
It's
for
tough.
a long time, because you are so much dependent on the other person, and you are basically, everything, you prepare all the decision, you execute all the decision.
Yeah. What were your KPIs? When you were thinking of, even if they weren't officially set for you, in your mind as chief of staff, what are you really driven to do?
At the beginning, the first couple of months were really tough. And I remember I had this one day when I was literally sitting on the floor of my office crying my head out because I was I will never be able to do this.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it just daunting, overwhelming?
It was super hard because I mean we had the whole stuff which I needed to manage was like over 167 people, 3 deputy secretaries, and for me it was that deputy secretaries are already very, very powerful, but I was supporting my Minister of State and I needed to make sure that she has the time, so I tried to loop in these persons for like certain periods, and there was like one of them came at me like, what the hell do I think I am that I only put her in for like 20 minutes and she needs 1 hour with the minister, and she told me that she needs 1 hour. This is a topic, and what do I dare, like how do I dare decide?
How did you receive that? Because that's hard when you're getting pounded. Like, did you deal with it well, or did you like?
Back then I was like telling her it's okay. She went out of my office and I broke down.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, what the hell do I am doing here?
I appreciate your honesty. My mum told me a long time ago. She said, as a woman, she was giving me advice to share with my wife. She said, at best, you can cry once, right, in front of your boss, because especially if your boss is a man, they're not going to feel very sympathetic.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I think typically the difference between a lot of men and women, not all, is that most men, when they receive that, they become aggressive, right? And I always say to my wife, the fundamental difference between a lot of men and women is men will go and shout and beat their chest, and women will get emotional and cry. And I think both are fully understandable and relatable. Just that's how we receive information. So, but then did you come back upstairs and say, right, this is what's going on, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, after that, it was good. And then at the end, I mean, she needed to accept my authority, and I was not backing.
Yeah.
I told like, okay, this is how I made the schedule. I understand that you don't like it, but this is the schedule. And it's just that when I let my feelings, like on the surface, I was always very, very confident.
Yeah.
It's just that in the background, I always had people and friends with whom I could share my insecurities, and still up until now.
Wonderful.
Because there are always, and there will always be moments when you feel like super insecure.
Yeah,
and
of course.
But then it's like you cannot really express it because, as you said, I never cried in front of people.
Yeah.
I was never really... This is not what you can really allow yourself, but you need to have a safe space where you just close the door.
Yeah.
You have a good cry, or you have a good shout, or you just let your anger out.
Yeah.
Or you just have your support group, my husband, my friends, with whom I can tell them like, I'm just feeling that I will not be able to do this.
It's a privilege to have such great friends like that.
Yeah.
I think one of the questions I had for you was, as your burgeoning career's just grown from strength to strength, who do you seek counsel from? Because the reality is most of your friends may have not been doing what you're doing, and certainly not as advanced. So who did you go and speak to? Did you speak to your parents for counsel, or?
My husband is definitely one of the persons who know me fully, and he knows me in all the facets, and like he is one person who knows me in a very, very complex way. The other persons are definitely my parents. My dad has been always a great role model for me in terms of career, and it's still up until now. I'm like very much daddy's girl, calling him with all the issues.
I love to hear that.
And he's very much there for me. My mom very much in female roles, and she is also a great support for me. But career-wise, it's definitely my dad who I'm still turning to when it comes to advice.
I find one of the reasons why I was asking, because I've got 3 kids, 18, 16, and 10, and my 16-year-old daughter. Of my 3 kids, she and I are the most similar. And I wrote to her the other day, and I just said, baby, I believe in you. 100%, I think you can run through walls. That's how tough you are. And I said, I just want you to know I would run through 1 million walls for you. You're going to be very successful. Enjoy this moment, but keep pushing forward. Don't ever give up. I'm very proud of you. And, I think it's very important. I tell my kids every day I love them. The 10-year-old, like, it just, she does it. But I think it's so important because we need that, right? We need that infrastructure and support. Okay, so now let's fast forward. You're an ambassador. On day 1, do they give you a playbook? What I'm guessing not. Unpack that journey for us, because I'm fascinated.
Oh my God, it was tough at the beginning, because I think like all the roles which you step in and which are new are tough because you need to figure out how it is. For me, Indonesia was, and I think looking back from each and every position you learn, and right now if I would go back, I would do a lot of things differently.
Give me 3 things you do differently.
Like, first of all, the power dynamics, which took me quite a long time, and right now I figured it out. But back then, it was like definitely like how I deal with my staff, how I deal with people who are like not really my own selected people, how to work with them, how to put them in there, how to be more confident in my leadership position. Back then, when I started, this was a question for me. I think I was really good in picking up the cultural part. This was for me always very, very important. And also in Indonesia, I was very lucky that I had a very good colleague who was, she was living in Indonesia previously for 10 years, and she gave me really good advice. And I was never shy to take advice. I just needed to, I think back then, looking back now, I would distinguish from whom I'm taking advice and from whom not. And to really think about it, because I was always very authentic in like, yes, I'm insecure, I'm doing this for the first time, give me advice. But I think I should have been more selective on like who I'm actually taking advice from.
But how, I mean, let's just unpack that, because hindsight's 2020. So if you were going back to your younger self, how would you make that observation or delineation? Is it like, are you referring to people that perhaps didn't have your best interest at heart?
Yeah.
So how can someone make that assessment? It's not easy, right?
It's with time, but because this is something which, again, looking back now, I would do it differently, but I wouldn't change it.
Of course
because
not.
this was the experience what taught me all the things how I am today.
Yeah.
And politics is very much about power play.
Big time. You know, you have to, I would only imagine you've got to understand the players on and off the board. You know what I mean? You've got to look over your shoulder, and it's crazy. All right, so what other couple of takeaways would you have given yourself?
I think all in all, I did great, honestly.
Of course.
I
You're amazing.
I wouldn't change a lot of things. For me, it was always important when I went in Indonesia, especially, but then also like what I did also in Singapore for me was to understand the culture. So because I'm not a memorizing person and I'm not one for the facts. Of course, I read all the country reports, I read the news articles. But for example, what I did before I came to Indonesia, I read Ovidia Yu's books, the Auntie Lee mysteries.
Yeah.
And I loved them. I learned all the Singlish words like kiasu and buakaluak and like how it is. And it was just like such a fun way to immerse into like how Singaporeans think, how the general life is. And I did the same in Indonesia as well, that I read a lot about their legends and so on and mythology. And
so
it took me some time until I figured there are some novels which are written in English, because in Indonesia there are not so many Indonesian writers who actually translate into English. But there was like one amazing publisher, Lontar, who published Indonesian authors and novels in English. And I started reading all of them, and a lot of things became much more clearer to me.
So interesting.
How the people think.
Yeah.
Because facts are always there. And facts you can always check.
Yes.
You can always have your paper, you can check that. But what you never know is like, what's the actual mindset of the people who you are talking to?
Yes.
And if you hack that, and again, coming back to personal connections, that's where I believe you can be powerful.
Yes. I completely agree.
Numbers you have, but like how the other person functions, what will make an impression, how you approach them, what is for them a deal.
Yeah.
What is for them a compromise?
Yes.
Because it's very, very different individually as well, but especially culturally.
Yeah.
And to get a better understanding of like where they are coming from and where I'm coming from and where can be the middle ground, that was for me like a very, very powerful kind of learning, which Indonesia taught me.
You know, it's funny because I moved to Singapore in 2001. I was 22, and I always say this, and I legitimately mean this. It took me about 7 years to learn that in Singapore, yes is actually no. And it's not that people are being rude. In fact, they're trying not to be rude, but they are not comfortable saying no. And I always say, like in Hong Kong, they'll kick you out of the office, and you'll know before you've even finished your meal, the plate's taken because they want to put someone else. And each country is very nuanced and very different. So what I've learned is depends who you're dealing with, is how do you bring those forward? How do you have clarity? So like, if I deal with someone from China, if you ask them a question about their personal life, sometimes that won't go down so well. So maybe if you explain why, I'm married with kids, it's got to be tough if you're thinking about relocating with the children. So you explain, in essence, what the question is, and they kind of will get it. But the nuance is very different, and you probably had to deal with it across so many different levels.
Yeah.
right? Talk about your role in Singapore. What were you doing?
So for me, because as I mentioned, I was asked to become an ambassador because for us, trade diplomacy became very, very strong. And for that, we needed this kind of new creed of ambassadors. And that's how I viewed myself. Because I was not an experienced career diplomat. I was always lacking the actual knowledge what some of my colleagues have that with their international experience. But what I was for is very strongly in business diplomacy. And in Indonesia, I sixfolded the trade numbers between Indonesia and Hungary. And
Wow.
I achieved one of the biggest technology exports of Hungary.
Wow.
Was an electronic tolling system, which Hungary will deploy in Indonesia. It was a $300 million kind of concession agreement. So that was my biggest achievement. And after that, I came to Singapore because I was so strong in business diplomacy. And for me, like naturally, when I was talking with our minister and with the PM, like, what should be next? I told him that I really like Southeast Asia. And for me, this business diplomacy is very strong and very much to my liking.
Yeah.
And then definitely Singapore is the logical next step.
Yeah.
And here in 4 years, I think I achieved a lot in kind of strengthening also business relations, bringing more Hungarian companies to Singapore. But at the end, which was a big achievement, which I'm very proud of, is that we achieved a big Singaporean investment to Hungary, which we just announced a month ago, which is a 700 million euro investment in an R&D manufacturing facility of a company.
Amazing. So I just want to understand some of the lessons that you've learned. So when you're speaking to all these very influential people, is the key to finding out how to close a deal really to understand what they're looking for, what are their needs, what are the requirements, what are the gaps? Is that where it all starts?
Yeah, kind of. And it's very much, it's the holistic view. Nothing ever, in my opinion, is just one way.
Yeah.
You always need to see the whole person. You always need to give them a holistic experience whenever they're coming to Hungary to see the sites. Of course, the sites and the numbers need to be correct, but at the same time, you need to make them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
You need to show that their wives can have also a lovely time, that we have wonderful spas, we have great shopping facilities, and so on. And you need to look at the whole package because, first of all, yes, the entry point is your numbers, your incentives, and your message should be right and should be a good fit. But then even if it's a good fit, you need to see, like, from there how you go into convincing.
Yeah.
Because so many things are a good fit, and we have it in so many places of your life. Like, yeah, you want a water bottle. There are several amazing water bottles on the market which fits your kind of, but how do you choose which one?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the color which you like, or it's just the design. And when you consider this all in all, and especially on such big projects, to have this, and I think that's why women in diplomacy are so important, because I think in my experience, women have more of this fine feeling
100%.
for the little things. Like, like, yeah, the main thing is okay, but like there might be a little something which we might add, which might be positive, or here on that side, or that person in the board does not seem so convinced. Let's look what he's liking. Let's give him this present, or like, let's invite him for this and that. And like these little tiny...
Those touches though, like I can be diplomatic and I often choose not to be. No, but like the other night, so I'm an introvert, and because of my day job, I don't have a lot of, battery reserves left for socializing in the evening. And a couple of weeks ago, my wife had a bunch of her very senior colleagues, top professors from around the world, and I had a really bad day, and I got home about 9 o'clock. I said, "Hi guys, how are you?" And then my wife said, "Will you join us?" And I said, "No, I've had a really shit day. And if it's all right, I'll leave you guys, so I'm going to go upstairs and have a glass of wine." And, like 2 weeks later, she said, "I can't believe you said that." Right? And I said, "I want you to know I'm 48. I am being very honest with everyone from now on, because I think everyone there will get that. Half the people probably didn't even want to be there. That's just, life." But so I've got a good friend, Suresh, and he invited me to his Diwali party. And I said to him, "I'm just letting you know ahead of time, I really don't like socializing. So thank you, but I won't come. I'm very happy to have a one-to-one with you or a family dinner." And he was quite taken aback. And I said, "Just, moving forward, thanks. You can always invite me, but I'm not going to come. That's it." And then I told my wife, and she said, "I wish I could say things like that." But it's okay, because we all work in, like, I'd love to spend one-on-one time with people like this. But you had to become a master of dealing with intimate settings, and big settings. So I was going to say, how did you navigate that? Because that is a skill.
You need to learn that. It's you get the hang of it, the same like with public speaking.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I first started, we had like a small national day gathering, which was like, right now thinking back of it, it was ridiculous. It was like only 20 people, 20 members of the Hungarian community at the residence. And I was rehearsing my speech, which was like not even a speech. It was like a couple of minutes introduction. Like, I'm very happy that you're all here and so on. I was rehearsing that for like, I don't know, 2-3 days. Right now, wherever you put me in a setting and you say, Judith, talk about a topic, I can talk about a topic for like 15 minutes. I don't really need preparation. But this was like 10 years ago.
It was early on, right? Yeah.
So, and it's the same with social settings. Like, first of all, at my first receptions, I was just like super awkward, standing there with my glass of wine, looking anxiously like, who the heck can I talk to? Who do I know? Oh, you, I know. It's like, oh, how are you? And then I was like sticking to people for it. And it's like, because you need to get the hang of it. You need to be more relaxed in it, and that's not something which will go on the first run. And I had difficult. So many mentees who were asking me that how do you behave naturally in a reception or a social setting. I was like, you don't. It's not. It will come. You need to go. At the first, you need to really, and in all, especially when you start as a new ambassador at a place, you need to make a decision that you go to each and every event and you are out there, because people need to see you for your face, and you need to meet people more people you know, because it's like you need to kind of push yourself to be comfortable but not being comfortable.
Yeah, I love that.
And you need to push your boundaries. Like, you understand that I don't like this. That's why you need to do it.
That's what people don't get. Actually, this is a funny story. So, you know, when I met you, that was the first networking event, or if you can call it that, any event I've been to, I reckon, in 6 or 7 years. I don't do those things because it's not something, but Steve invited me, and so, you know, because I invited him to be part of my ESG and sustainability series, which, you know, you're part of. But, and then I said to Nisha, I said, I'm just going to go and do my thing. And I didn't really, I'm old now, I don't care. And one of the things I often say to people is that embarrassment is an emotion that most people don't really want to think about. But I think when you get over yourself and you know, no one really cares. Tomorrow they'll forget if you mess up or whatever. Just go out, shake hands, and have fun. That's the biggest thing. Now, I want to unpack your journey into going to the private sector. So when did you, I know you said you initially thought about this years ago, but for this round, when did you make that decision, and how did it look like? Or what did it look like?
Because you see, I am a person who has a lot of energy and who wants to do a lot. And for me, like, I really enjoyed, and it was a privilege to be an ambassador and to work for my country. And for me, this was like really something which was very close to my heart. And I never did it because of the rank. I never did it because of the money. I never did it just for the title. It was for me something where I felt that I could create impact. This is something which I can do from my inner conviction, which really is something which drives me. But at the same time, I felt that like ambassador is the top of the diplomatic career.
Yeah.
There is no higher role.
Yeah.
Higher up would be a political role.
Yes.
And I don't really want to go into politics. That's not my field. And also because even in diplomacy, I felt very comfortable in trade diplomacy and business diplomacy. I don't really want to go to diplomacy within the EU or within multinational organization or somewhere. That was just, and I know this is an amazing field, but I just felt this is not something for me. And in terms of business diplomacy and ambassador, I basically reached the top.
Yeah, you reached the peak, the summit.
And from here, you can still have some amazing postings. And yes, you could have, and I had the prospect for that.
Yeah.
But I felt that like, this is just, if I look at me, and right now we talk so much about longevity and your life purpose and so on. And I was like, I have like over 25 years until I retire, even if I will retire. Knowing me, I'm not sure I will stop ever like doing things. And I was like, I cannot do this on and on again and again, and no new challenge and no new kind of like thing to overcome. And I thought like, I either do the change right now or later it will be even harder.
Yeah.
And looking back, I really feel that, because even right now it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough to be back there after having a super successful career in public service for 20 years. And right now I'm feeling like I'm back at 22 when I started my first job. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so super insecure. Like, I need to learn so much about the industry, about the company, about the corporate world. I need to understand, again, completely new, the communications, the internal politics, so it's a lot, and I'm very happy that I made this change.
Me too. I think
because I think later it would have been harder.
Yeah, it's well, we all can become pigeonholed, right? But I've always felt that if you have a black belt in one discipline, to get a black belt in another one actually isn't too difficult, because you take that excellence that took you there, right? So you've got all the ingredients, you've already got the business knowledge, you just need to apply it, right?
It sounds very easy like that, yeah, and that's what I think as well. I'm not sure I'm in that space right now.
It's not,
but
listen, it's not easy, but what I believe though, you know, because I'm someone that I've tried many different things, and you know, one of the sayings, you know, that you kind of made me think of, if not now, then when? So it's something that we've all got to think about. But excellence, it's winning is a habit, right? And the truth is there is no winning without failure. So you embrace that. That's just part of the course, but it's inevitable. You're going to be successful in it. You just got to lean into it and do it. We're all different though, right? Some people, I always think I can do it. I'm going to do it, no problem. I'll just roll into it. It will make you laugh. So when I started this podcast journey, I had actually planned it about 6 months beforehand, but I hadn't told anyone. And I spoke to Isaac, my head of research, and I said, look, this is what the plan is. I want to do it. I've done some research. I want you to watch these videos. And over the weekend, we're going to go and buy some equipment. And he said, when do you want to go live? And I said, two weeks minimum, 3 weeks max. Have you got your first guest? I said, no, don't worry about that, but I've got a long list. So he goes, we're just going to do it. I said, yeah, we're going to roll. And then you just, when you're in it, you just pick it up. You roll with it. Now, one of the things I'm really curious to talk about, we were talking off camera, is your health routine, your fitness journey, both physically and mentally, because it's a passion project of mine. But tell everyone what you do, and you know, how did this all come about? Because you do a lot.
So as a kid, I was constantly exercising, and I was already growing up with sports, and my parents made it very important for us that, like, healthy eating, healthy habits and movements and going into the forests and so on. So I was growing up with that mindset, and I think this is important. And also later for me, like, movement was always part of my life. I always needed to exercise. I needed to do like either aerobics or dancing or whatever. And then I think like over 20 years ago, or like even more, kind of yoga came into my life. And I really enjoy that, because I realized that it's much more internally focusing on my body, very much aligned and so on. And since then, I'm practicing yoga at least like 4, 5, sometimes 6 times a week.
Wow.
I need that as a reset, because when I'm doing yoga, and I need a sport where my mind is focused internally.
Yes.
I love those people who run or swim, but for me, it's
That
like
doesn't
I need something which focuses my mind internally, and where my mind cannot run wild. I'm overthinking a lot of things.
Yes.
So I need my mind to quiet down. So for me, like yoga, and also I have a very strong spiritual practice, which is for me also very powerful in times of resetting. This has always been part of my life. And then recently, what we talked about with all the new technologies which are emerging, I'm a very curious person about new things which emerge, and I'm always very interested in like new technological achievements, super interested in AI and how these things involve in our life.
Yes.
And I'm a big fan of like how technological advancements like hyperbaric oxygen chamber, cryo sessions, which are initially rooted in ancient knowledge.
Absolutely.
But upgraded with technology and used wisely, how they can help you in your recovery journey. So I do. Do
you think a cold plunge or cryo is more effective? They're very different, right?
I think it's for each and every person different. And I'm vegan for over 15 years. I'm very conscious of my choices. But I also believe that what works for me might not work for you.
Is your husband vegan? Just out of curiosity.
He's vegetarian.
Okay.
He's vegetarian.
Because I'm always curious, if couples are on a different meal plan, it makes it a little bit more difficult.
He was vegan for a couple of years, but for him it just didn't work out. He loves his cheese.
Yeah.
And he's feeling much better with being vegetarian.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, it's like, it's each and everyone's own choice.
100%.
He tried vegan. He was not really, he loves his cheese. He's eating cheese. So it's like, it's okay.
See, I could be a vegetarian as long as I'm allowed to drink the adult grape juice, which is red wine.
That's
you know what I mean?
vegan.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
So-
vegan. I'm drinking wine.
And then, so let's break it down. So you're doing cryo,
Yeah.
the hyperbaric chamber. So a lot of people won't know what that is. Explain it. And you're doing that for a half an hour session because
Yeah.
it takes time.
Yeah, it takes time, but it's worth it. So it's like, but I'm not, I'm not an official for that to tell you. So excuse me if the facts are not right, but it's like basically oxygen-enriched air.
Yeah.
And you sit in a hyperbaric chamber where they increase the pressure on you to 1.35 bar,
Yeah.
which is actually the same pressure which as an embryo you experience in your mother's womb.
Yes.
So it's already, and because of the increased pressure, your intake of oxygen is higher. So basically you're re-oxygenating your body. And it helps a lot with like cell recovery and
This whole
inflammation and
regeneration,
stuff.
you know, a lot of, I'm an ex-boxer, so a lot of boxers that have suffered from brain damage, they're trying to, recover, and the hyperbaric chamber is a very important one. It's an expensive piece of equipment, so we're fortunate in Singapore there are now clubs that do it because it's so new.
Yeah.
And the cold plunge, I mean, I hate cold plunge. I don't even know. I mean, people do it, it's like, come on, really? I don't know. I'm not that I'm skeptical about these things, but give me a steam room or a sauna any day. Which one do you prefer? They're very different.
I think for me, and here again, it depends on like what my mood is, as a woman, I think our bodies function differently.
Yeah.
It depends on our cycle as well, which day, what is good for you. And internally, you always need to listen to your body, because on some days I feel like I don't want it, but then I feel that I need it. And then I go into it and first it's horrible, but then afterwards I'm like, oh, yes, I really needed that. And on some days I'm just like, I know that right now it's not a good time for it.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like I'm like cozying up. The same way, like for me also my yoga practice is not always the same.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go to like more slower classes, more yin, more reflective.
You've got to listen to your mind and your body.
And on other days I'm going for a super intensive hot vinyasa because I love to sweat it out. I love to work out. So also for me with these recovery techniques and with cold plunge, I'm not someone who says like you need to do a cold plunge every day.
Yeah.
I do a cold plunge like once or twice a month. I do infrared sauna because I really like and I feel the benefits of red light therapy.
Yeah.
I do from time to time floating in a deprivation tank. Yeah. For me, everything which draws me away because I'm such an out there
It gives
person.
you time to be introspective, to think, right? To go into yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I like that. But I also do like Epsom salt, magnesium baths. Yeah.
I love it. You're
A
all
lot.
in on this. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is, it becomes fun. You try that's the thing with me in sports. I've always tried doing different things, and it keeps it fresh. It keeps, and then what's very humbling is if you try something that's new, you're a novice at it, and then, but I think that's the fun part. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Although I'm half German, so I'm like super structured.
Yes.
If I once read about something, I try it. If I like it, I do it a schedule. So for me, like oxygen, I do it 3 times a day, 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Cryo, the same. I have my
Very structured.
everything for me is like it's structured and needs to fit into my life. If it doesn't, then I don't. It's
No, but tell the guys. So you will get up in the morning. So if you're using the hyperbaric chamber, you'll do it before work because it gets you cranked up. It gets you ready.
Yeah.
And as you said, also if you're doing the cryo, it's an espresso. When you said that, I thought, okay, I've got to try it. I've never done it before, right? So
it's much easier than a cold plunge.
yeah, it's like in and out, right?
Yeah.
Fast. Now, talk to me about your new role. So talk about sustainability, energy, and why this sector, because you and I are both fascinated with it and geopolitics. So how did you land on this particular area?
So for me, because I really loved it in my previous job as ambassador, I was having an impact. So I definitely wanted, and I did it with my heart. So for me, switching to the private sector, I needed a company and a sector where the impact is great. And I needed a company with whose values I can really align, which is not just profit making. But yes, you need to be profitable and you need to be pragmatic, but at the same time that there is a very clear mission and vision behind it on which I can get on board and like energy sector is something which is like nowadays, it's something which is all over, everywhere, super important, very, very impactful.
Absolutely.
A lot of things when you think of energy transition, sustainability, but also just in fact, like how much our energy demand is increasing, especially right now in Asia. It's insane. And with digitalization, AI and data centers.
But people don't think of that. When you say to someone, how AI is changing the landscape, people don't understand what data centers are, and just exactly how much resource it's draining on the earth, on the environment.
Yeah, and like waste, for example, everyone is aware that you separate, you recycle plastic, but no one is aware that just with your cloud usage, how much waste you are actually generating.
Crazy.
So I think for me, like energy was this very, very impactful sector. And this company, especially for me, I really very much align with their mission, which is that they are targeting a very pragmatic view. So they started in energy trading. They do gas and LNG trading because they believe that for the time being, gas is still a transition fuel, which we need. But at the same time, they are very heavily investing in renewables.
Wow.
And in flexibility assets, how you integrate renewables into the grid.
Yeah.
And they are very much kind of like thinking of the energy trilemma, which is one, you need to do decarbonization.
Yeah.
Second, you need to have energy security right now in geopolitical situation. But third, you definitely need to have energy affordable.
Yeah.
Because that's necessary. And how you tackle these things, which are sometimes even against each other.
Yeah.
And they very crucially think on that, on how you do that. And they have this long-term vision on that. And also the mindset that they very much put emphasis on talent.
Yes.
And how the company intensely grow with this. That was for me something I was like, okay, I want to be part of that.
Sounds so exciting. And they're headquartered out of Switzerland, right?
Yes.
I think because when you're balancing all three, like in Singapore, they're saying in 10 years, we're all going to be in electric cars. But I think, it's funny, I was talking about property and someone said to me, look, Miami is the place, Florida is the place. And I said, it sounds very exciting, but the weather conditions there are so scary with, tornadoes and hurricanes, and that can change everything with erosion. Like beachfront properties are not what they were. And it makes you reconsider everything. Do you know what I mean? It's, so talk a little bit, I know you're so new in it, but talk a little bit about your role, if you can, and some of the projects you'll be working on in the future that are non-sensitive. What kind of stuff will you be doing?
I mean, currently I'm just with the company 1.5 months. So it's very hard to talk, what are the projects? So I'm basically their advisor and currently I'm helping them to kind of map out Southeast Asia maybe a bit better. And it's also a bit finding my place because I know my passion.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And I think it's in a first position when you get to know a person, and you still don't, you are getting the feel where can we engage with each other or what would be where we are going to.
Yeah.
So I think we are still, and we, I mean the company and I, we are still in this phase of actually figuring out of I know kind of what can I bring to the table. They have a kind of understanding why I'm there and we are figuring it out what could kind of be.
But that sounds like a wonderful journey, and the fact that they brought you on, they can see that value add. You'll work it out. It'll be fascinating. I've got some rapid fire questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, as an ambassador, what is one word that you would use to describe your experience during that time?
Patience and authenticity.
Okay, big time. Which is more important?
Authenticity.
Beautiful. So, what do you think makes Hungary's voice unique on the world stage? Because not everyone's going to be familiar with Hungary as a country.
We are a nation of individual freedom fighters.
Love it. That's powerful. That takes your mind to many different places. What's the most valuable skill that diplomacy has taught you?
Patience.
Yeah. Does it work in your marriage? It does for my wife. No, it's a big one. In terms of values, what are the values that you think are so apt that you've learned as a diplomat and ambassador now that you're bringing them into the private sector? Like integrity?
Definitely, but I think the two sectors are not so different.
Yeah.
It's I wouldn't say there is something which I couldn't have learned elsewhere than in diplomacy.
Yeah, I like that. I think, well, the one thing that, you're used to dealing with governments, and, for a government to change its policy, it's like moving an oil tanker with a feather, right? It's not going to be easy. So hopefully in the private sector, you get to see, even, I'm not saying you didn't make impact, but you'll see a bigger impact and faster probably, I'd imagine. What about misconceptions that most people have about being an ambassador?
Oh, a lot. That it's this super shiny, fancy lifestyle where you have like stylists and people to prepare everything, and it's just about like receptions and balls and events and constantly dress up and
You mean it's
going
not?
around with the glass of champagne. No, it's not.
Tell us,
I mean,
what is it really like?
I mean, definitely a lot of people think that it's this very shiny and glamorous, but I mean, think of the budgets of governments.
Yeah.
It's usually much less than anyone would accept. So it's like a lot of creative approach, a lot of like budget cuts, and a lot of like, how do you make an event still shiny, but at the same time, like really creatively figuring out on terms of like how to do it. And yes, a lot of things are done by yourself. Like I did my speeches myself. I did my dresses. I mean, I didn't had a stylist. I didn't had a photographer. I wrote my own social media posts. So it's like, no, you don't have a person for each and everything, and you are still a normal human being.
So you become a one person walking, actor, director, screenwriter, producer.
Exactly.
And I love that though, because it means you're so well equipped for many different things. What's the best feedback that you've ever received that has helped you on your journey?
To always adjust my message according to whom I'm speaking to.
That's powerful. It's not easy because learning who your audience are takes a little bit of time and foresight. And what advice would you give to your younger self coming up through the ranks, knowing what you know now?
Authenticity again. But
Okay.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's a
think
big one.
I did all, honestly, I think I did all good, and I needed all the experiences
Yeah.
to be who I am right now.
100%. It's a funny one because sometimes I feel I'm a little bit too authentic. It's okay in private rooms. On social media and stuff, you have to watch your P's and Q's a little bit more. But what I have found is, you have to be able to read your audience. But that has enabled me to communicate a lot better with people because there's no BS. It's just real. And look, most of us have the same emotions and feelings. And if you can be honest with yourself and share a part of you, I find people are more honest back.
Yeah, but at the same time, I also mentioned that it's important to visualize yourself like how you want to be perceived by others, because like, and be authentic with that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not bringing the same authentic Judith to this podcast, or if I would be in another setting talking at CNA about like situations, I would be still authentic there, but most probably in a lot of settings very, very differently. So to adjust your message and to adjust your authenticity on like whom you are talking to, what is the room, what is what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
If it's just like I want to have like really a deep internal connection and I'm looking for friends, then yes, I'm fully unfiltered. But if I'm like, I want to do this project and I want to convince someone to do this project with me, then I'm seeing myself. I want like, how do I would like to perceive myself if I were them? And then build from there with my authenticity.
Love it. Great, sage, wise advice. What's more important, preparation or instinct?
For me, instinct. I'm not good, as I told you, I'm not good with facts and numbers.
I love it. A lot of people don't listen to their gut feel, though. It's interesting. And again, I think it takes time and wisdom to get to know. Sometimes you get burnt, but listening to your instincts is very, very powerful.
But you need to be prepared, though. I mean,
course.
if you go to a meeting without fully, I mean, you need to have your numbers, but you can have them on a paper.
You see, a lot of my guys that I work with, they're prepping 5 minutes before a very important discussion. I said, what are you doing? You need to equip yourself, take your time, think about quality, get ready, because you don't know, the other person on the other end may be very well prepared. You're going to stuff it up. So it goes a long way. In terms of mentoring, what's the most rewarding part of your mentorship journey, especially of young leaders and women?
I'm always learning a lot, like the younger generation, how they approach certain issues. I'm like, wow, okay, you really can do that. Yes, you have a point. I'm constantly learning. Mentoring is always a two-way street.
It is, right? It is. That's a big thing. And I'm a big advocate for what you can learn something today, you can implement and teach tomorrow. right? And that's the best way to remember, by the way, for me anyway. What is the one word that you would use to describe your leadership style?
Direct and personal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think and motivation is for me very important. I always put out like what my motivation is, and I try to figure out in my team what their motivation is and work with them on that. And when we are clear in the team on each and everyone's motivation, then it's easier to see that person through that lens, because maybe one person is motivated because they are really passionate about the subject and they love it and they put it all in. And maybe the other person is just, this is just a job for me and I have kids at home and I want to be at home on time.
Yes.
And both of them are fully legit and fully okay. And I think both of them need to see each other for who they are.
Yeah.
And for me as a leader to see them who they are and to utilize their strengths and weaknesses accordingly. And that we are all aware that, yes, this person is amazing, but they want to be home.
Yeah.
You are great, but sometimes you're overdoing it because you are too passionate about, and like, let's take a step back and do a reality check if this really applies to what we actually want to achieve. So it's like you need to be very clear on that.
Great insight, and a lot of bosses could learn from that, because and actually, if you've managed someone for a long time, you'll see different parts of their journey. You know, when they're single and hungry, and you know, you got married with kids, and you've got to go home early. That's the beautiful part of life. If you could invite 3 women from history to have dinner with, who would be at the table?
Catherine the Great for sure. Margaret Thatcher, and third one might be probably Egyptian pharaohess Hatshepsut.
Wow, Margaret Thatcher, what a character she was, hey? What a character, what a strong woman. I'm curious, what drives you in terms of your ambition in your career, on your journey?
Making impact.
I love it, yeah.
That's for me, like, really, that I feel that it's meaningful what I'm doing.
Yes.
And that I'm really creating impact.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because when we first met, my immediate takeaway on you was that you're very kind and genuine, right? Also no nonsense. I can see that. Kindness is something that comes through with very special people, but not always. You know, and I think that for me anyway, that's what resonated.
That's actually, let me just quickly, like, I have an amazing woman who had a great influence on me, and that's Pinky Lilani, and she is a wonderful person, and she does the Women of the Future Awards, also in UK and also here in Southeast Asia, and I'm lucky enough that I'm on the board of her judges. And she's always super inspiring. And she started this Kindness in Leadership Award.
Really?
Because she's talking about it, how important kindness is in leadership. And this very much resonates with me because...
You know, unfortunately, it's overlooked. I can tell you, I look at a lot of leaders and it's transactional. A lot of CEOs are in power for a very short period of time. And no one's really thinking about the long-lasting impact that they have on their team and their colleagues.
But I think I would a bit like question that, because I met a lot of people, a lot of CEOs, a lot of top leaders in the world. And for me, the ones who really made an impact and who, they were always kind.
Yeah.
They were always intelligent. They always did philanthropy out of their own conviction, not because this is a must-have. And I saw that their impact and actually their companies thrived much more
because of that
than those which were only focused on profit and on immediate gain.
It comes down from the top, right? 100%.
And that's why I truly believe that on the long run, that's what we need to embrace.
That's sustainability in a very different way, but it's 100% sustainability. In terms of confidence, what gives you confidence, and what does confidence mean to you?
It depends on a lot of things. But definitely, yeah, I think like for everyone, it's like outside acknowledgement. Yeah. Definitely when someone says you look good or you did this amazing, or even in social media, like likes and so on, I think this is definitely feeding off that you want like outside feedback that definitely gives you confidence.
Yes.
But I think like also for me, like that's why for me my spiritual practice is so important, because just when you can like kind of quiet down everything and deep down you look inside and you can look into the mirror and you say at the end of the day, like, I'm okay with what I'm seeing and with what I've done.
That's very important. It's very, very important because then you can live with yourself. What I think is often overlooked in business and in careers is happiness, because people will talk about many different things, but if you're not happy and content, if you're not valued, if you're not seen, it's a non-starter. And if you don't feel good about yourself at the end of the working day, forget about it. I'm just curious, because you sound like an avid reader. Give me a couple of books that you've read that changed the trajectory of your career or had an impact.
It didn't change the trajectory of my career, but recently I read the book from Václav Smil, How the World Really Works, which was really an eye-opener for me. It's a super interesting book of like how things are interlinked, and like just like kind of to have like a slice of tomato, it actually comes with 3 spoons of fossil fuel and like oil, and like how it's interconnected. How it was a really, really eye-opening book for me. That was recently one of my most interesting reads.
I saw this thing and I read about this guy who's explaining how a pencil is made, right? And if you take the yellow paint that the pencil's made, the rubber, the steel that covers it, the lead, this is a global product. Not one person could make it, and that is true of life. Well, Judith, it's been an absolute pleasure to share your story and learn about what you've done. Thank you so much. And I'm super excited about what's next for you and how this unfolds.
Thank you so much, Paul. It was amazing talking to you. I really didn't even felt the microphone. It was really nice. Thank you so much for having me.
We could have done it over a glass of wine and had that kind of feel, right? Thanks, Judith.
Absolutely.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Paul. Likewise.
Cheers.